little introduction to digital art. The image that I've got here is something that I created earlier. I do it in blue so that the outline is a lot easier to do later on, because I use that as a draft. As you can see here, I'm getting a decent pencil to draw the black outline. Not too thick, just so it doesn't show, well, doesn't take up too much of the image. Drawing there, and as you can see, I've already started deviating from my draft lines, purely because, again, trying to make that image a little bit more interesting. And the draft line is just your original sort of idea, and you work from there. What we are drawing today is a Warlock from Destiny, or Destiny 2, depending on what you prefer. Just adding more detail there. I've based the facial features on a normal Destiny helmet, I think Prophet Snow or something, and actually the mouth bit is sort of a mix between Darth Vader and the Guyver. I'm not worried about being too neat, because the actual painting process will sort of neaten up any of the sketch lines, etc. And if I don't like a line, I immediately undo it with Control Z. Yeah, as you can see there with the shoulder pad, I wasn't happy with just the plain looking one, so I thought it's a bit inspired by the Eagle Judge Dredd shoulder. I decided to add in a little bit of extra detail. You can see the sketch lines underneath are just very, very rough. It's just an idea. If you are interested in seeing a sketch, then by all means just leave a comment, and if there's enough, I'll actually do a full sketch in another video. This is a good time to flesh out the pouches with the sketch lines. You can sort of make them a bit more interesting to look at. Also correct any lines that you don't like doing. I use actually a tablet and a pen, so you actually get pressure sensitivity, which makes it more like drawing on paper. Because the harder you press, the darker the line. detail in, and you can see we're now doing the gun holster as well at the same time. I tend to flit around from one piece to another. I just my particular style in that I don't sort of do one bit then move on to the next. I tend to sort of do an area and work on it bit by bit, and it builds up. Sometimes I even change from the backing image completely, like with these pouches. I've actually put little flaps on the front just because I thought they would look better, and as you can see, it's beginning to take shape there. Lightly pressing there, a little bit of detail. Again, we don't need to concentrate too much on detail because the colouring after doing will sort of provide more depth. You know, this is just about getting the feel for the piece, making it just feel how you want it to look. Don't be wedded to the sketch outline that you've done. If you want to change things, you can. In a second you'll see that again I have changed something again, like two pouches. I wasn't happy with what they were, so I put little grenade for a grenade launcher or whatever. Who knows? It being a sci-fi setting, you can draw shapes that aren't quite, don't make any sense sometimes, and it fits in. I absolutely hate drawing hands. I always find that they're a difficult thing to get looking right, hence why I never stick to my sketch lines. I always change the shape a little bit because usually my sketch lines underneath don't represent the hand that I sort of really want there. To the other hand now. This hand, as it's holding a gun, is a bit harder to draw. So as you can see, the sketch lines are incredibly basic. So I will add more detail in as I do them. Gun is just a collection of different shapes to sort of look a bit like a gun. It's not based on anything in the game. It's not based on anything in the real world, apart from it's relatively gun-shaped. The thing about drawing sci-fi guns, again, unless you want to base it on a particular real world weapon, you can get away with doing anything you want. I mean, just making it look gun shaped is enough for this image. If I was to do one with a bit more detail, then I would probably look in some of the weapons in Destiny and go from there. draw it. But not put in so much detail that it becomes really hard, because when you have a look at the colouring technique, you'll see more detail, but again, not doing too much, adding loads of little nonsensical touches. Little final detail layers, as you can see. It all helps bring out the pouches. A little bit of extra detail around the hands gives you an idea of where you want your shading to be when you start putting the colour down. This is another reason why using a pen is really great. Is using a mouse would end up looking a bit uniform, whereas with a pen and a tablet you can draw it. Details in the description below for the equipment that I use. No affiliate links or anything like that. Now, when looking for a colour, I tend to work in grayscale first, just purely because it's a lot easier to shade grayscale and then add a colour over the top, which we'll go through in a little bit later. Brush wise, I tend to go something with a medium flow, so that when you add colours in you can mix them easier. Sort of gives you an oil painting effect, and I quite like that. Speed up the colour in there because grayscale. That is the base colour, and now we start adding in, using the pen with the flow, we start adding in our shading. It will start building up depth, and the great thing is working in grayscale is you either darken or lighten it. You don't have to worry about matching colours yet. So I just find it a lot easier working in black and white, and then adding the colour in over the top. With bigger areas it's a lot harder to get your shading right, so I tend to do that and neaten up as I go sometimes. But then I use a smudge tool just to soften that up. And now I start bringing back some darker colours in. I don't work too dark to start off with because I want to have a look and see how the shading's going, so that I can then add in darker or lighter shades. So as we go further in, even the light shades aren't too light at the moment, but you get to see it build up and bring in the depth, and all of a sudden what looks like a fairly plain image can feel like it's starting to sort of get depth, feel like it's actually going to be something. Another thing I like about having a tablet is you can alter the brush size nice and easy with shortcut keys usually on there, and you can alter the size of the brush as you go and enable you to sort of add in your little depth and flourishes. I don't tend to use multiple brushes, I tend to stick to one when I'm just colouring because I like the consistency. I just use different sizes. See the flow makes it a lot easier to mould your darker colour in with your lighter colour. Gives it a softer look, but also I think helps with making it more natural. Like I said, with the grayscale, I find it you can get a really nice effect, and if you're not happy with the colours that you overlay later, you don't have to redo the entire colouring of the piece. It's just a lot easier, and I think saves time. I mean, the advantages of digital art over traditional painting is that you can undo and redo and change to your heart's content. Normally when colouring I tend to sort of make note of the direction of light. However, with this one, because I'm not having really a fixed light source, I'm just doing what I think looks cool, as opposed to what looks right. Working dark to light, back to dark, back to light. Darker bits, especially around the grill, can really help bring it out, as you can sort of get a nice sort of depth to the image now. Like I said, I don't work too neat until I have to, because it's just quick putting little strokes here, putting little strokes there. Building up darker greys. And if you find it's not dark enough, the great thing is you can just go in with a slightly darker grey. You don't have to go, oh, I've picked a yellow for argument's sake, and I need to go darker and darker and darker, and maybe go to a brown. It's just a lot easier, as you'll see. If anybody would like the sketch file, then if you would leave a comment, and I will put a link to a download for it in the description. Sometimes it can look like you've overdone the shading, so So if you feel that you're not happy with it, you can just go back over and back over. With the pen flowing in, it mixes as you do. Now, once I've got the first part of shading, I tend to then go over with a darker, work it into a darker with maybe a black, and just sort of put that into areas just to really bring out the darker areas and sort of make the lighter areas pop a little bit more. I find it works especially well with the hands around the fingers. Light and dark around the pouches, and I think they've come out quite nice actually. As you can see, we're getting a little bit of depth. The gun, the other hand, the bottom of the smock, they look a bit flat now, but we're getting there. Gun, bearing in mind it's metal, I'm using more of a scruffy technique to sort of colour it in. It sort of helps when you start doing your colour layer over the top. Now my least favourite part of doing is when you're trying to shade in a completely large area like this. Working dark to light, try to keep the shadows in the top bit so it looks connected, so because it's quite easy when you've got a big blank bit compared to a higher detail part for it to sort of look separated. And even if you sort of overlight it, which I do in a moment, it's really quite easy to bring it back if you're using grayscale. So I just went over it with grey, which blends the white back in. There we go, and with some darker it sort of helps it all look like it's folded. Now with the colouring, like I said, just put a blank colour down on another layer. As of yet, I'm not even worried about blending, as you can see, just flat shading. Still using the actual same pen. I haven't changed the brush, sorry, that I've been using all the way through. Tend to do quite a large bit before I start doing adjustments on the colour layer, just because I want to make sure that I'm happy with the colour first. This is sort of the only bit that I spend purely because it's a lot easier to just stay in the lines and to rectify. Now, here we go. Changed it to color overlay, so the grayscale shading comes up from underneath. Now we'll color the leather straps, and you can see that the shading comes immediately up underneath. So already a lot of the work's been done. You're just color inking now. I tend to sort of try to keep to a bluish light colour. I just think it tends to look quite nice in terms of actually what it looks like. That I felt needed to be a bit lighter, so a bit more silvery. There we go. Same with the helmet. Zoom in and out. A lot of people, and you may find this works for you, they tend to flip the image as they're doing it, just to sort of stop them getting tired of seeing the same thing, and makes it easier to spot if you feel there's any mistakes. I tend not to do that. Probably I should, but I tend not to. There you go. If you see, I put the colour down in the wrong place, it's a lot easier to rectify. Even over the darker greys, the colour being put over the top, the overlay, really helps sort of change how it looks, and I find it tends to add more detail. And like with the sleeve, you can sort of see a bit more. Was just me checking to see whether I preferred another overlay style, but actually overlay works nicely. doing here is adding some definite shadows in. Again, you don't have to be neat, you just cover the bits that you want black, go to an overlay, lower the opacity. It helps bring out the shading in deeper parts. If you see here, look, you don't have to be neat, but it really helps with the depth. And the same for the highlights, a little bit there, around, again, not having to be neat yet. And then we have a look at different color methods, sometimes soft light, sometimes overlay. Again, overlay works better on this particular piece. I sometimes have two layers for the low lights, shadows, purely because I like a darker shadow and it's a lot easier to sort of work on that, and it helps really make the other shadow pop. Now, what I did there was I Control Shift Alt and E and put everything onto one thing. I then put everything into a masters folder, which I then don't touch, turn the masters folder off, and then neaten up any artwork. And then if I've made a mistake, I can then remake a complete part again using the masters. It's quite easy to rectify the scruffiness later on, and even then you don't have to be 100% neat and tidy. I mean, this is my personal style, sort of a bit more scruffy. Now, it's a nice enough image, but it's a little bit bland, so sort of we'll add a black rectangle of the area, sort of get that in the right spot. Make a copy, bring that in a little bit as well, and we'll try to make this part of an entire piece, make it a bit more interesting. Plain text, I just work with Arial. I know you can get loads and loads of funny texts and styles, but I tend to find simpler works nicely. But this is, at the moment, just something there so I can see where the composition's going. Put a little black circle there. What we're going to do is we're going to create a planet. A little bit of a glow. I mean, you can add texture onto it as well. If you find a picture of it, you can wrap it round. But I quite like not putting too much detail into the ancillary objects, purely because I think that you don't want to detract from the main part of your image. I get rid of the background. I always work with a grid the moment I start having to draw straight lines, because I want to maybe put them in the right spot. You can do all this stuff as well using the brush by lightly putting it around the edge, but I quite like using some of the tools that are in Photoshop. You can adjust and then you can just sort of fade away using the erase and a soft brush. There we go. So you can see sunrise now over a planet. Now we want to select the sun, take a bit of colour from there so it matches, and put it onto the planet. As you can see the bit there where I haven't erased it properly, so we'll just get rid of that. Again, don't worry about being 100% neat. It all adds to the character of the final piece. It's a painting, not a render after all. Sometimes, there we go, didn't like that being, so I went not quite black, increased the size because for a bit more dramatism, actually changed the brush now to a splatter type brush and just liberally go around, see stars, add a light glow behind. Again, try to add a bit more detail on the planet. Now, looking at all Destiny's artwork, the writing's always white, and so I want to keep in with that, so just change it to white with a very thin stroke. This is so it stays visible. Now we're doing the Warlock symbol, which is just 3 triangles, nice and simple. Copy and paste, here is your friend, 3 separate layers, put them through, and then zoom in. And there we go, put the white lines in from the outlines. You've got to get it right, which I didn't there, but it's, like I said, it's easy enough. Undo, go back, highlight thing, and there we go. Now we'll merge the layers after rasterizing them and makes them a lot easier to position. Now we get the right size. I felt a little bit larger, and like that, round back, so I'll turn it into an overlay again, and you can see darken off around the planet just to sort of separate that from the main piece. Now we need a border. Now just fill it in, and this is a gradient that I've made to do retro style text, so to give you that sort of Transformers Decepticon look, and which I thought looked quite nice around the outside. And there we go, it's now just a case of neating everything up, putting a slight colour hue over the top just to join everything together a bit more, and just neaten up the final touches there. Just like to say thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. If there's anything that you're interested in, then by all means comment and we'll get around to it.